How many of you are already doing high school? Okay, we got one kind of in there, sort of. You know, we're hedging the bets here. Okay. Okay. How many of you are really concerned about homeschool, high school? How, were you concerned about elementary when you started elementary school?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's just another stage. It's another stage. You know, elementary school looked hard when you started. Now it's fairly easy, and you're just looking at the next stage up. What is it about middle school and high school, though, that makes you nervous? Is it the lack of knowledge of the subjects, math, you know, you're not a science person. Maybe it's preparing your children for college, and that just seems like more than you're geared or prepared to do. And maybe it's that really scary word, transcripts, you know. Whatever it is, all you can think of is help. Who's going to help me? Who's going to recommend things to me? Who's going to give me some advice? That's what we do. That's, you know, one of the things we talked about yesterday in a workshop about You Can Homeschool is find someone who's been there and done that and get their information. You know, ask how they did it, ask what they learned in the process, get help, find a mentor. Homeschoolers are fantastic networkers. We network with each other, and if you can find other homeschoolers and learn from their experience, you can be better at what you're starting to do yourself. You don't always have to think of college in middle school. Aren't you relieved? I've talked to families and friends that say, you know, in middle school, the teachers and the administrators are all pressing in their programs for them to decide now what they want to be in the future. And they haven't quite figured out who they are to begin with, you know. I mean, still trying to learn who I am, learn what I'm about. So the benefit in high school is you're not pressing them as a 7th or 8th grader to know what they're going to do. Let's explore who you are. Let's figure out who you are. But let's focus on your goals instead of making a lot of academic pressures. I was sharing last night with some other homeschool moms that are working on our team, and it was just delightful to share about the things that we've enabled our high schoolers to do in the homeschool setting, to be able to explore their interests, to find out what do you want to do, what do you want to learn about, what are your interests. You know, one of them had a daughter who loved horses, and so they incorporated a lot of horseback riding as she came into her middle school years, and then she began to work in order to earn her horseback riding lessons and eventually owned them, and now she's in vet school. You know, that's something that she may not have known if she hadn't been able to begin exploring that as in her junior high and high school years. Don't cave to academic pressure. We homeschoolers, and I've been there, done that myself, and I talk to so many who just feel the pressure of we've got to meet the needs, we've got to do well on those SATs and ACTs. You know, I'm a terrible teacher if my kid can't do well on those standardized tests. Don't cave to that pressure. No one cares more for your kids than you do. No one knows them better than you do. Become a student of your child. Begin to look at what they are directed for, and they may not fully understand their directions. They may not fully understand. Have you noticed that you are very organized? That you line everything up in your drawer, or you line everything up on your desk? I know that's rare, but you know. But you know, sometimes you can see traits in your students that they don't even notice. Help them explore those. Make those goals for yourself and your family be the priority. What are my goals? Am I wanting to build a student that is strong in their faith? Am I wanting to develop a child who has a heart as a servant and serves others? Am I wanting to, you know, what is it you have set as a goal from the beginning of homeschool? Why did you start homeschooling? Sometimes people start homeschooling and they don't even really know why. It just seemed like a really good idea. But as you get into those rougher times, you know, January, February, March, when you've had too much snow and you're stuck in the house and you really want to get out and you really maybe want to put them on that yellow bus. And, you know, that's when you need to know what were those goals. Look at the goals again. If you haven't set goals, I encourage you as couples, husband and wife, sit down and look at some short-term goals and some long-range goals. You're not going to hit those long-range fast, but set the goals and let that be your parameter and your gauge for how you're selecting curriculum, for how you're selecting the way you spend your time, the electives you do with your children. But focus on the goals and don't let academics alone drive what you're doing, because the academics alone will suck the life out of high school. You want to make it something that just gives them something to look forward to in their lives. College, shockingly enough, is not the ultimate end. There are some students that will not go to college, and I've known many students who went to college and never used their degree afterwards. So it's not the ultimate end. You want to prepare them for life in your educational efforts, not necessarily just prove academic success. That's similar to what I was talking about, those academic pressures. I know of many parents that are looking, because they're not certain about their own abilities in homeschooling, are looking to prove through their students' academic qualifications that theirs was a good education. We've begun to prove, we've got a track record now. You know, Sonlight is 20 years old. Homeschooling has been around for 30 or so. We have a track record now with colleges, with the academic elite, so to speak, that says we do well. As a general population, homeschoolers do very well. Colleges are looking for our students. So you don't need to prove it so much. But again, look at those strong interests. Look at those talents. Look at the talents and how you can tweak what you're studying to facilitate those talents. Add in other opportunities, electives. Look for opportunities for your students and allow those talents and abilities to develop in them as you explore new things. You know, we encouraged our boys to try the fine arts, to do some acting, to do music. Several of my boys are musical. One of them just really likes to shoot things, and so he's now in the Army, and he can break down any weapon the Army has in split-second timing, you know. But that was just a feature, an interest, a talent that he had. And so we gave him opportunities with paintball and other things to really fine-tune it and explore it. You like that idea, don't you? Where does your child's nature, where do his or her interests lie? Consider, and this is kind of the college or not aspect, consider whether your child is more suited for academic or vocational concentration. You don't have to make high school all about academics. You can meet the core requirements of academics, but then add a lot of extra vocational concepts in there. Whether it's additional, you know, maybe it's music, maybe it's small engine, classes so that they can learn small engine function. Maybe it's building things. Maybe it's creating things in nature, you know, landscaping and working with plants. Give them the opportunity and the experience to test an interest, because I have known students, a lot of those that went to college and got that degree and then discovered that really isn't what I want to do all the rest of my life. If in high school they can have experience in maybe shadowing somebody in the job or volunteering in the related field to get that experience and see, is this kind of the environment that I was thinking it was before? That's an opportunity for your student to test their interests, to look at their areas of skill, and then build those as well. So don't leave academics as the whole focus of high school. Give a lot of opportunity for building other interests and skills, because again, it's a lifetime thing. How many of you have thought this? I can't teach high school. Yes, you can. The thing is, you don't have to teach it necessarily. Again, I said homeschoolers are networkers. Homeschoolers are very, very good at bringing in those who have the abilities that they didn't have. It seems daunting to take on a task that it normally takes a whole facility with administrators and teachers, and you know, high school, they teach separate subjects. They specialize in a particular subject. It's not one person covering all of them. And so that can seem very daunting for you when you say, whoa, wait a minute, you know, I don't think I can cover everything they cover. But you start by equipping yourself with the right tools. That's where this time in the homeschool community is beneficial, because there are a lot of tools out there. If you've been to a convention vendor hall, you have seen how much has been made available. Some of them are the traditional tools. Some of them have been created by homeschoolers who built them as they went along. But the materials are out there. If you don't have a skill in science, you can find materials, you can find curricula that will teach, and you learn alongside. Latin was something that I wanted a skill for my sons. And so we picked up Latin. The Latin Road to English Grammar is a program that Sonlight offers. And I learned Latin right alongside them. There were times I couldn't answer the question. I couldn't clarify why the answer was there. So we worked it out together, reasoning the process and reviewing what we'd found in the textbook. I wasn't the one with all the answers, but we worked alongside each other and then discovered you could use it in different ways. When we traveled in historical locations and my son discovered he could read the emblems and the seals in the Valley Forge Chapel on the floor and on the walls. He thought, hey, I know what that says. That was fascinating. It was kind of the lights on. And so there's opportunity there to learn alongside your child if you select the tool that equips you and the child themselves. The old question of accreditation. I've heard this for years. There may still be institutes, there may still be programs that are looking for accreditation, but I have not seen it be the issue that it used to be. It is, Sonlight is not accredited. And a lot of people ask about that and some people back away. But when you look at accreditation in general, there is not one accreditation organization in this nation. There are multiples. I think there's 3 different ones. So even the standardized Iowa testing, Stanford testing, all the standardized testing cannot aim for one particular scope and sequence because not every textbook follows the same scope and sequence. You've probably noticed that as you've looked at different material, even in the elementary levels. Some programs will focus on American history and then pop in a year of world history at 4th grade. And other programs are going to do American history in 1st grade and 5th grade. And it varies. There's not a single laid out, locked in scope and sequence. So accreditation means you have to choose what accrediting organization you're going to follow and then feed into theirs. Sonlight chooses not to do that because we feel it would weaken our programs. It would require us to omit and tailor the programs to one perspective when we want to make as much of a perspective, as wide of a view available to you. So we are not accredited, but I can tell you I have 2 sons that have gone through college and graduated now, and it was never an issue at all, never. So I don't think that's the thing that you need to worry about. Look at what you've got available to you. If you're, as far as looking at these right tools, what does Sonlight offer? We offer teaching textbooks and Think Well math for your math programs. They are more independent study programs. Think Well is internet-based and teaching textbooks is CD-ROM-based, but it will allow your student to study a little more independently if you don't know the program. But then you've got sciences. I was not a science person. I was a business major. And so when we approached sciences, we struggled with some choices that we had. But when we found Apologia, that was the answer for science for us. And I'm delighted that Sonlight carries Apologia because it is a science program actually written for homeschoolers. First year that we did biology with Apologia, that was the first level we tested with my oldest son. And I asked him, do that first module and then let me know, is this going to work? And he said, Mom, I feel like the guy is sitting at the table with me with a cup of coffee, just talking to me. Because it's not written in textbook ease, if you know the terminology of the wording they often use. It's written like he's speaking to you. It's not a watered-down program. It is a tough program, and it's very high level and high skill, but it's written for you. When you're doing chemistry with Apologia, you can do more with baking soda and vinegar than I ever dreamed. I thought the only purpose was to blow up the balloon on the top of the bottle, but he incorporates that, and he tells you go buy Windex cleaner at the grocery, go buy this particular product, so you're not having to have this fancy chemical lab to be able to do chemistry and understand the concepts. It's a valuable tool for those of us who aren't geared to science. Then you've got electives. whatever your student's interest doesn't have to be limited to electives, but you've got speech with Dr. Jeff Myers. Our Secrets to Great Communicators is an excellent speech program. You've got Understanding the Times, which if you do have a student that is geared toward college, I highly recommend Understanding the Times. It is worldview training. It has now been updated from the program I originally used when my boys were in high school. Only covered 4 worldviews, one of them biblical Christianity, cosmic humanism, secular humanism, and Marxism. But now they have updated to include postmodernism and Islam, which is a valuable tool to understand the perspectives. But what I found was helpful with that is if they go into the college setting, they're going to be listening to professors from a wide range of perspectives. And they need to have the equipment and the understanding of the worldviews to be able to say, this is what's skewing this person's perspective, and this is why they are speaking from this way. It even helped in literature, understanding literature that we were studying in high school years. There were some books that I thought, what was this person eating? This was strange and warped, but when you began to study in the worldviews, you began to understand they don't have that biblical Christianity basis. They are looking from a different perspective, and that's directing the way they write. So having that Understanding the Times worldviews is valuable. We've got lots of foreign language. I mentioned learning, I'm losing it, the Latin Road to English Grammar. We also have Rosetta Stone, which offers 26 different languages. Economics is generally a requirement, and Sonlight has a very good economics program. Logic materials, psychology. Computer skills, if you've got a student that wants to dabble in web design or just learn the basic Microsoft content, there's some very good things. I even sent some of those to my parents who needed some help. So you can find excellent tools. You don't need to worry about the accreditation issue. I talked about networking, co-ops. Often you will find co-op opportunities for science, for math, for English, literature, things like that. Again, network with other homeschool families. When my boys were, the first early years we used Sonlight, we actually had another family that we were close with that had similar ages in their boys, and we had a Sonlight co-op where we used the same core, both families using the same high school core, and once a week we met at their home and we would discuss the materials that we had covered. She actually was into the historical details. I enjoyed the literature. So we read the books. She read the history materials, I read the literature, and then we could actively, knowledgeably discuss those books and the material with our sons. And because it was 2 families from 2 different backgrounds, we had some fascinating discussions, especially, Core 200, when you're talking about the development of Christianity from the time of the apostles to the 20th century. And they were from a different denominational background than we were. And we learned not everybody got it right. It just, we viewed the good, the bad, and the questionable, but discussed it, talked about it, gave ideas and perspectives, and shared those with each other. We didn't have all the answers, but the discussions and the development for our sons was valuable. So consider looking for a co-op opportunity or network with other families. When it came to physical science with my youngest one, even the Apologia didn't seem to be the ideal tool for him, but we had a father in our support group that was a meteorologist. And so he taught a group of boys physical science. And they loved it. They explored with him, and he'd take them off to, workshops and all sorts of other opportunities that they could do. But then there were others that came to me for finance classes because I'm an accountant. So, what is your skill? What is your skill? How can we share and work together? How can we help each other teaching? That's the way to get through it. If you don't directly teach, then facilitate their learning. You don't have to teach. That's, when you can't say, I can't teach high school. Maybe not, but you can find a way to facilitate their learning in high school. Learn alongside them, find a good tool, find a network, find a co-op. You can do it. There's an opportunity. And if you're not sure where to look, start by praying. Start by praying. Then you get to transcripts. How do you create that thing? There are a lot of great resources available. These are 2 books that Sonlight carries. Barb Shelton's Senior High Home Design Formula is a very low-key, relaxed, informal book. She writes like she must talk, which for some of us more organized people is a little bit difficult. But if you do those learning opportunities and those hands-on volunteer opportunities, her book is a great resource for how to create a transcript credit out of those non-traditional opportunities. Kathy Cohen's Homeschoolers College Admission Handbook, vital tool. Every high school homeschooling mom should have this book, I feel. It says College Admission Handbook, but the interesting thing about it is half of the content is just about high school. Half of the content is, first of all, yes, you can do it. Here's how it's been done. And then here are some other ideas for how you can put together transcripts and what you can do. And then if you're looking at the college admissions, she gives you the additional steps and the other ways to approach that and to get that admissions accomplished. A high school transcript is your student's resume. It's your resume. This represents their career in undergraduate study or in high school, elementary school, whatever. So just think of it as that. You are trying to present your student with this resume to a college or to, we had to give a transcript to the Army too. Present a general course of study, something that they can understand. And the neat thing, a lot of people question, I don't know how to do the format. Do you know that every school district in this nation has a different format? No one does it all the same. In fact, college admissions officers must be really creative people because they have to translate and sort out and find the information off of all different forms that come in from all these different school districts. So don't worry about the formatting of it. You can even change that up depending on what would best present or represent your student. But I recommend you begin to build it in freshman year. Don't wait until the senior year in May. And then try to think back to all the things you've done for 4 years or so. That's just really pushing it. So start taking notes. Keep those notes. I actually use the Sonlight Core schedule pages. And I didn't bring a copy in here, I'm sorry. But if you see that other notes box at the bottom of the core schedule page, I continued the lines down and then added horizontal lines in, and I would record other things that we were doing. We never had an instructor's guide schedule for math, so I always put our math schedule in there, and I usually put some aspect of our science schedule in there, and then if they did anything extracurricular, that was recorded there. So those 36 weekly pages became the resource for building my transcript credits. I could track maybe, some things I tracked how much time we spent at it, other things I just tracked the fact that we completed the full course material. But that way I had something in writing to build from, and I began to pencil out. It wasn't a formal final piece at the freshman and sophomore and junior year, but I began to pencil out what I was using, what credits were we giving out of that, so that I had something to keep building on from year after year. And I will say, personal experience, colleges do accept our transcripts. I had one son go to a private Christian college. I had one son go to a state university. In fact, I think pretty much every consultant that's in here today has at least one child that has gone to college, and none of us have had difficulty with transcripts being accepted. Personally, I think they're looking more at the ACT or SAT score than they are at our transcripts. But you still can get that represented. I even did a supplement for my boys because we used Sonlight all the way through high school. I did an appendix to that, and in 3 columns in 8-point font, I listed every book they had read as part of their Sonlight course. Because I wanted them to understand, we've done these courses, but this is how well read my student is.
Did you actually assign a grade to each course?
I did give grades, and I did that by way of a rubric. We don't have formal testing in our core content. We did a lot of discussion and a lot of relation and projects as a process. And so I just set up a rubric, and I only offered A, B, or C. D and F was not an option because that wasn't a course that was acceptably completed. So A meant you covered all of the books in the core. You read all the books or all the ones that I required. You demonstrated comprehension of the information, and then you could then, follow through timeline. We used timelines as a review tool. If we went through a timeline, I would ask them, what can you tell me about this person? What can you tell me about this event? And we would use that as a review. But I wanted them to be able to demonstrate good grasp for an A. A B meant they may have chosen not to read one of the books, or they may have chosen not to do as complete a work. And so the understanding was, here's my rubric, and this is what you know ahead of time, so that you know when I sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm giving you as a grade, this is why I'm giving it to you. So yes, you do need to assign grades. And then the amount of credit you give, whether it's a full credit course, a half credit, quarter credit, or whatever, can generally be done based on Carnegie units or just based on you establishing a pattern for yourself. Just try to establish it in freshman year and be consistent with it. In researching materials for the career planning program, I found that Carnegie units could qualify from anywhere from 100 hours spent to 150 hours. But 120 is generally the traditional portion, so that if you're spending 120 hours on the study in a course, then you have a full credit. You can easily spend more than that on Sonlight cores, but I didn't necessarily bump up the credit higher than that. If it was a very intense program, I gave it honors credit instead. But then when you're doing your outside activities, your arts, your music, whatever other volunteer opportunities, logging the hours, if you spent 80 hours on an activity, then you may decide that that's going to be a half credit. I generally did halves or wholes, not quarters and three-quarters, and the math was a little involved there. So you just assign a standard hours required for a particular credit level and then fill those in. You can organize your transcript by subject or by grade level. You'll see samples of this in Kathy Cohen's book. You may find, if you do the traditional academic study starting in freshman year and flowing through, then you can just list it. This is all the things that we did in 9th grade, then all the things we did in 10th, all the things we did in 11th and 12th. But if you do high school level courses as a 7th or 8th grader, they can be given credit on your high school transcript. And in that case, what I would recommend is you do more of an organized by subject than by school level or school grade level. If you do begin your high school foreign languages in 8th grade, I would give credit. If you do 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, give those full credits. If you start biology or physical science in 8th grade, you could potentially give that credit. If you do Core 100 as an 8th grader, I would give it high school credit because it is considered a high school level program. You just need to be prepared to justify if someone ever questions, but I've never heard anyone question it either. So you can just sort out that ordering, and you can also change the titling on your courses according to what would clearly be understood by that college. Core 200, History of God's Kingdom, is our title for it. That was a fine title when I was doing a transcript for my son going to a private Christian college. They understood that. They could relate that that was history. But my state university, it would have been, I don't know what that's about. So it was Western civilizations on that transcript. And we just shifted it. You can even reorder a transcript depending on what school you are applying to. You don't have to create one resume and use the same one all the time. You update it, you adjust it according to the company you're applying to. Same thing with your transcript. If Brian had applied to both a Christian college and a state university, I would have sent two separate types of transcripts with different wording on them because of the group it was going to. So there's nothing that says it can't be different. It doesn't have to be a standard. From a school board, it's the same because they don't want to change it for you. But you can change it. You've got the opportunity. The other neat thing that I found was very helpful that Barb Shelton recommended is if you are creating your transcript on your computer, you can do it in Word, you can do it in Excel. That makes it very easy to line up columns and things like that. But when you print it, generally you're going to print it in black and white. And so she recommends that the principal, Dad, or whoever is your principal, sign it in blue ink, because that makes it very clear that it is an original copy of that transcript. It doesn't look photocopied in any way. Simple tip, but wise. I think that was a very good idea. I often found, as far as colleges accepting our transcript, I did find when we were approaching with my oldest son, looking at a lot of different Christian private schools, almost every one of them had someone in the admissions office to work with homeschoolers. Someone who was geared to understand we don't have the same kind of paperwork, we may not have the same preparation, whatever. But I thought that was valuable that they had someone designated to work alongside with, even to help, you know, offering to help with the transcripts and things like that if we needed it. So it's available. I don't know I didn't really ask by the time we got to State University whether that was available, but it was encouraging to know that we've come to the point of they are welcoming us in, they're looking for homeschoolers to join them, but they also are facilitating through their admissions office. Many people say, okay, I'm doing these Sonlight cores, but how do I put that on the transcript? And so here's some ideas. I'm not offering this as a handout because it is not Sonlight. We are not accredited. We cannot designate officially the ideas. But this is how I broke it down for my boys on the transcript, and I recommend it somewhat. American history, 1 credit. Bible study, if they do the full Bible study material, 1 credit. In literature, you can get the half credit in literature and an English composition, a half credit, or you can just combine that and call it English 1. As you choose, you can vary it. And again, the amount of time you spend can vary. If you don't really dig into the full Bible study content, you may give half credit instead of a full credit, but that's an option. And then you can always adjust if you also do the composition with the vocabulary work, the analogies and the vocabulary from classical roots or any additional stuff, you may consider that as part of your English credits as well. Core 200. History of God's Kingdom. Again, here I noted that you could call it World Civilizations, a full credit of Bible study. Literature, I would say give 1 credit, and you can adjust this to give British literature credit. This is what I did with my boys, realizing that out of all the literature included in that core, 13 titles or so were by British authors from a variety of different time periods in the development of British literature. So I bought a used British lit textbook, and I figured out which time period each of those books came out. And before we started reading a new book, I didn't change the order the way Sonlight had them scheduled, but before we started reading another book with a British author, we read the introduction to understand what was significant about that period of time. For example, when you're reading the books like Jane Eyre or Pride and Prejudice, to understand that it was very unique in that post-Victorian era to have strong female characters in a book. That was a significant step in literature. So just understanding a little bit of that, I felt it gave them a sufficient understanding of British literature and the development, along with reading 13 titles, which is not usually the amount you would include even. That gave them a full credit of British Lit. And then again, you've got your English composition. These are the creative writing assignments that are included in the program, usually designed to coordinate with the literature. And that can be either a half credit or combined for a full credit with the vocabulary work. Again, I actually used just 20th century world history on my transcript. And Bible study was 1 credit. I gave a full credit for 20th century literature because it is a full level. Core 300 and 400 are very full in their literature sections. And then composition, again, half a credit or full credit depending on the extent of the writing that your student does from the assignments. See, that's another thing that it's difficult for Sonlight to say, this is the standard credits you can give, because every one of us uses it differently. Some of us do, you know, every single thing that's in there, and some of us tweak and adjust and thin it out. And so you have to decide how it works for you. Core 400, again, a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. I generally tried to use this in 12th grade, but potentially some have used for 11th grade. American government, 1 full credit. You'll notice that a lot of times the requirements, if you've gotten your school board requirements for graduation or standard requirements, they're usually looking for 1 semester of American government. We do a full, and it's almost honors level. Then also civics and political science. I gave an additional half credit because of the additional content in that core. Bible study a credit, American literature definitely a credit, and composition 1/2 or 1 credit. You do not have to complete the full core in order to give these credits. Like I said, some families choose to thin it out. One of the consultants that works here says, look, the average literature course is going to include 3 to 5 titles maybe. And in one of our programs, in American government, we do Moby Dick, Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Scarlet Letter, Huck Finn, and there's another large novel, and then a whole bunch of other smaller ones, probably 12 to 15 others. That's huge compared to what is commonly done in public schools. So this consultant decides with her children, I'm going to require you to read 12. And of those, this many will be large, and this will be another adjustment of lighter literature, but that will qualify as a literature credit in my perspective. And you have that freedom because you're the teacher and the principal, okay? So it's not always done all the same way, but you choose it. And again, I say that use those weekly schedule pages to be able to record what you're doing for all of your studies and have it in one convenient place. When we started using Sonlight, I got rid of my teacher's grade book because I already had that nice grid format schedule page and I didn't want to recreate writing it all over into another form. So I used those schedule pages all the way through. College and Career Planning Program. This is a program that I developed a few years ago for Sonlight. Based on my experience with my boys going into college. And it incorporates Sonlight style. We have several books and a guide, okay? Finding the career that fits you. This is a series of self-surveys so that if you have a student that really isn't sure, you know, do I like to work alone? Do I like to work in a group? Do I want to interact? Do I want to use my hands? What are the different options? He starts off with a really good study, biblical study of work and why we need to plan to work. But then he also gives a lot of options for how to evaluate yourself in these surveys to know what direction you might consider if your child is not sure where to go. Then we move into this homeschooler college admission handbook. And Kathy Cohen gives, like I said, some very good information. Again, I say, half of that book is about high school alone. So even if you don't have a child that you think is headed for college, I highly recommend that you get this book and have it available. And then the career planning guide that I developed, instead of a day 1, day 2 daily schedule, I broke it out as steps. Because some may do it on a daily basis, some may do it over the course of a couple years. But I set it up as steps. What can you do? How can you review your child? How can you make progress through these programs and know that you're covering it well? And then I also add in appendices for giving some charts on how to track college admission applications, college information gathering, information about the ACT and SAT and CLEP and AP, all sorts of different things in those. So I personally recommend it. And the other neat thing is you can get occupational education credit. So if you spend the time doing this program, in fact, I build it into the guide, track how much time you are spending, because you could get a quarter credit, half credit, full credit, occupational education, depending on how much time you spend doing this program. And again, it is not exclusively for college bound. There are a lot of different options. There's materials in the 2 books that talk about what if your child is not college bound? What if the program or the vocation thereafter is more of an OJT, you know, apprenticeship type approach? Here's how you might approach those things. And so, you know, don't feel like, well, if I know college is not for me, then this would not be helpful. I think the whole goal is to try to help your student find the direction and then follow a path to get there. So in closing, I believe you can. I don't know you, but I believe you can. My experience in 19 years of homeschooling, talking with a lot of homeschoolers, working side by side with other high school moms, finding out that you can, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a desire to prepare my students for life, to make them ready to launch and be successful and safe in what they're doing. I personally, from the time my oldest got into the high school, you know, teenage years, I personally believe our teenagers need us as much as our preschoolers did. And so I encourage you, don't let the academics scare you away from pursuing high school and being there side by side with your student as they begin to explore more of themselves and be prepared to launch from home.